Two popular YouTubers, Dhruv Rathee and Akash Banerjee. One describes himself as an educator. The other claims to be running a premier satire platform. But this episode is likely to be a tsunami of information and a historic moment for Dhruv Rathee, for Akash Banerjee, and of course for India's enemies. So please pay close attention, because the next 10 minutes will probably be the most important time you will ever spend on the internet. To start with, listen carefully to the UK Foreign Office Minister's statement.
We stand up for the BBC, we fund the BBC, we think the BBC World Service is vitally important. We want the BBC to have that editorial freedom. It criticises us, it criticises the Labour Party, it has that freedom which we believe is vitally important, and that freedom is key. We want to be able to communicate the importance of that with our colleagues, our friends across the world, including the government in India.
Lies, deceit, greed and hypocrisy. It seems clear that these are the four British values that the whole world has been a victim of. Hello, Mr. David. How dare you preach about freedom and editorial freedom when it is the British government that deliberately produced fake news stories on a massive scale for its worldwide British propaganda network, with your BBC playing a key role in it? Yes, Mr. David, while talking about the BBC, why didn't you tell the world about the British government's Information Research Department, or IRD? Mr. David, will you run away from the fact that you represent a country that even created a dedicated propaganda unit to spread fake news and lies globally, and has done that on an industrial scale? Yes, the British Foreign Office's secret propaganda unit, the Information Research Department, was created to produce fake news stories, fake posters, fake documents, and fake press releases and more to support or sponsor propaganda publications around the world. Mr. David, your country has secretly and deliberately circulated fake news stories and fabricated content causing deaths, chaos and violence in the former colonies to support British interests and to create helpful political attitudes in the more influential third world countries. Your country's secret propaganda unit, IRD, not only collaborated with the BBC, but also worked together with British embassies across the world to supply fake news or to influence overseas journalists and opinion formers. By doing this secretly for decades, your country has lied to the world and has even kept its own people in the dark. Your country's secret propaganda unit and its fake news stories have caused irreversible damage and permanently twisted opinions of people at home and abroad. In other words, together, the BBC and IRD have deceitfully used fake news or propaganda to brainwash millions around the world, and they have even used overseas journalists and opinion formers to achieve their goals. And guess what? Even when the IRD was purged after 30 years, David Lee noted that the government propaganda continued. In his book, The BBC, Myth of a Public Service, Dr. Tom Mills exposes the ongoing close relationship between the BBC and the secret British state. According to Dr. Mills, the World Service and BBC monitoring are deeply embedded in the foreign policy, security and intelligence apparatus of the British state. Mr. David, all this shows your country, the UK, as a permanent graveyard of press freedom, with the BBC right at the heart of it. Point 2. So, while analyzing the BBC documentaries on matters related to India, I accidentally came across several videos in which I immediately recognized two popular YouTubers who I'm already familiar with. The first one, Dhruv Rathee, and the second, Akash Banerjee. First, let's focus on Dhruv Rathee. In case you don't know him, a quick introduction. He is the same YouTuber who deceitfully or foolishly came up with a fake and invalid formula and a fake methodology while trying to explain the World Happiness Report. Quite confidently, Dhruv Rathee presented his lies and fabricated content in his video, spread that to more than 1 million viewers, and until today has not admitted to all his lies, even though I fact-checked his video and tried my best to help him. This incident didn't just expose Dhruv Rathee's poor intellect, but also his poor attitude towards fact-checking and fake news. But of course, as this BBC interview shows, he was already presented as some kind of messiah against fake news. See what happened here. The BBC organized its Beyond Fake News conference and interviewed Dhruv Rathee about the topic of fake news. What can I say here? I mean, the fact is that on one hand, the BBC itself has worked together with the Secret Propaganda Unit, IRD, to spread fake news and propaganda around the world, and then, on the other hand, has the audacity to organize events such as these, posing as a champion of fact-checking, and then interviewing someone whose very first video that I landed on had a frequency of one mistake or one lie per minute. Now, you might say that hypocrisy is dying 1,000 deaths here in this screenshot. But, I mean, what is happening here seems to be far beyond that. Of course, it is very likely that Dhruv Rathee may have lacked the intellect to fully understand the BBC's true intentions and how the post-colonial power structures work. But remember, the BBC is not naive. As I have described in point 1 of this episode, the British government has a track record of selectively using foreign opinion formers to serve British interests. In the past, it has done it through its Secret Propaganda Unit, IRD, which worked together with the BBC and others to create helpful political attitudes in the more influential third world countries. So, the main question is that at some point, did the BBC and Dhruv Rathee also come together to change or influence the political attitudes of Indians? Well, the answer is yes. See it right here. Point 3. Now the other YouTuber, Akash Banerjee. Here is why I am familiar with him. A while back, when the RBI guidelines regarding auto-debit payment caused incomplete or declined transactions on Patreon, this YouTuber posted a video in which he sensed some sort of conspiracy, claiming that by hook or by crook, sabki bek todne ki sajish chal rahi hai. Now, the same Sajish YouTuber, with what seems to be his conspiracy theorist attitude, has been recently making videos regarding the BBC. Here, in this video, he even claims that BBC ko godi mein betne ka koi khas shok nahi hai. I mean, how can this YouTuber claim anything like that? Does he have any clue about what I explained in point 1 of my episode today? I don't understand. Why do so many Indians take such YouTubers seriously? Akash Banerjee, instead of spreading your Sajish or conspiracy theories as you did in that video, please learn how to be more objective. Anyway, Akash, you claim that you love asking questions, right? You claim that you want more Indians to ask questions, right? Consider starting the journey toward your emotional freedom. Watch my series, Can Indians Question You? 16 episodes posted so far. More to come. Akash, the historical and colonial amnesia continues to exist in the colonial criminal states because they are still scared of or have been running away from tough questions. Have you failed to understand that too? Point 4. So, should the BBC be punished? Well, BBC, you partnered and worked together with the fake news producer IRD, whose propaganda encouraged violence, racial tensions, and even deaths of innocent civilians and others. The British government didn't just support you and the IRD's fake propaganda machine, but it also funded Reuters indirectly through you. BBC, you published the documentary India's Daughter, whose final version was deceptively re-edited to stereotype India and label Indian males as sexual predators. BBC, you even used fake footage of child labor in India to make a documentary that even received an award. By doing all this, you have cheated or lied to millions of people around the world who still innocently believe that you have been independent and reliable. Just admitting that you worked with the IRD is not enough. Your misconduct has already had an irreversible effect, and that's why you must do more to lessen the damage that you have caused. Release every single piece of fake news or propaganda that you ever received from the IRD and decided to publish. Issue an apology for each one of them. Trace who else cited or quoted your published material that originally came from the IRD. Of course, what the BBC, the British Foreign Office and the IRD did is not how a democracy should behave. That's more like a behavior of an autocracy. In an ideal world, the BBC should be penalized or punished in various countries for its wrongdoing, serving as a lesson to others. Not only that, an independent international commission must be established, led by the worst affected countries, to hold the BBC accountable. Multiple academic inquiries should be initiated, and aspiring journalism students should learn how not to behave like the BBC. But of course, we don't live in an ideal world. Today, those who are responsible for spreading propaganda and fake news on an industrial scale pose as forerunners against fake news. And guess what? This man, Robert Conquest, who worked for the British government's fake news machine IRD, was even given the USA's highest civilian honor by George W. Bush in 2005. As I have said before, the former colonial criminal states were never properly punished for their crimes. And what happens when criminals don't get punished? They commit more crimes, and they even start shaming and blaming their victims. Are you still wondering why India is being shamed and blamed by them? Hi, my name is Karolina, and here is my appeal to you. Every YouTuber who truly loves India or is India's genuine well-wisher, please feel free to react to this video. Remember, together we can challenge what is easily one of the most powerful or nefarious ecosystems in the world. In this video, perhaps, I have risked almost everything by directly challenging some of the most powerful people. I have risked our channel's future, our personal safety, and my family's safety. You know who we are up against, and it is only going to get tougher. Please come forward and support our efforts by contributing to our work financially. Thank you, and I hope to see you again.